10 seconds. 3, 2.
Hey everybody, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Matt Connerton, and I'm so sad and lonely. Yes, I'm here all by myself. Gary Hopper, the Honorable Gary S. Hopper, is still on his trip. If you're not aware, he's riding across country on horseback, and I believe we'll be seeing him shortly. Maybe not horseback, but and I don't have anyone here with me. I'm all alone. Someone may or may not be showing up. I'm not sure.
I'm here with you, man.
Oh yes, Paul E.C. is here with me. He's here with all of us in our hearts, and as is Gary, of course, and God and whoever else. So I don't know. So I might be alone for the hour, or someone might be showing up, but we'll see. I leave all of that to the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. I don't get involved in the booking of the show. I just show up every week, and this week I showed up, and it's just me and Paulie C. That sounds like the name of a song or a really bad buddy cop movie or something. I don't know. Anyway. Yes, he agrees. So what we'll do is, I guess we'll kind of treat this like an unofficial bonus edition of Matt Connerton Unleashed, and we'll see what happens. Last week we had Glenn R.J. Willett here. That was fun, but Glenn is not here today. I don't know what he's doing, but he's always out making trouble. So there's of course plenty to talk about as we are on the road to the election, the countdown to the election, whatever sort of cable news cliche you want to use. Careening toward oblivion, we could go with that, depending on how you feel about it. I personally, I'm kind of dreading the end of it. I sort of don't want election day to come, because to me it's like, this is like reading a great novel. You read a great book and you kind of don't want it to end because you're enjoying it so much. This has been by far the most entertaining election I can recall. Who would have imagined, just 4 years ago when it was Romney versus Obama, fairly predictable, no big surprises, nothing too outlandish. I think the most outlandish thing that happened during that election was Romney at the last minute, a few days before the election, going on Univision to try to convince Hispanics that they shouldn't be afraid of Republicans. And if you've never seen it, it is actually unintentionally hilarious. Romney goes on Univision, and he had gotten like it looks like a spray tan. So I guess he and Trump have something in common, and he literally looks orange. Look it up online if you've never seen it. Romney's appearance on Univision. He turns himself orange, I guess, to appeal to the Hispanics aesthetically, and actually he kind of succeeded in one sense. He did look Hispanic, and of course his father, I guess, was born in Mexico and whatnot, but other than that, not too many crazy things. Of course there was Romney's 47% comment that got him in a lot of trouble and whatnot. So there were these things that went on during the 2012 election, but we've never seen anything like this. We've certainly never seen anything like the debate the other night. That was pretty wild. So as this election continues to kind of swirl around in the toilet, I'm actually dreading the final flush on November 8th. I don't want it to end. Part of me almost wants Trump to win, even though I don't support him. I don't support either of these people. But at least if Trump wins, I think the circus will continue. And who knows what happens from there. But for those who don't know, of course, I'm supporting Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, although I've gone from, as it pertains to Gary Johnson, I've gone from being really enthusiastic about him to now kind of looking at him as the least of three evils, because I've become rather disillusioned with him.
I got a shot of Romney if you want it.
But, oh, you do?
Yes, you want it on the screen?
Yeah, please, let's see it. Paulie C's got a shot of Mitt Romney for us. There he is, yes! Look at him! He looks like George Hamilton in that picture. He's got the orange skin, and he does, he kind of looks Hispanic, but it's an obvious spray on tan. Thanks, Paul. That's awesome. Yes, that was, I remember watching that 4 years ago, and just, It was the most unintentionally hilarious thing Mitt Romney has ever done. Not that he's ever done anything intentionally hilarious, I would venture. But since this is Gary's show, we will start with, because I have some Trump stuff, I have some Hillary stuff, but I know that Gary's audience would prefer to hear some nasty stuff about Hillary. Like I said, I'm not supporting either of these candidates. I'm an independent. I don't support the two-party system, and I don't understand why Americans felt that we need to, just find the two most reprehensible human beings possible to be at the top of their respective tickets this election cycle. But that's where we are. So let's start with something on Hillary that just popped up on Politico. I have not pre-read this, so it's news to me. Anyway, a hacked 80-page roundup of paid speeches shows Clinton praising Wall Street. Clinton's Speakers Bureau flagged hundreds of excerpts from her high-dollar speeches that could prove damaging. And there was some of this in the debate the other night with Trump, but there was a lot of this during the primaries, the debates with Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders. Bernie really tried to kind of hammer this home. Like I said, I haven't pre-read this, but it says here, Hillary Clinton frequently offered warm and at times sympathetic words for Wall Street during her paid speeches before some of the biggest financial powerhouses as the nation was still recovering from the 2008 crisis, according to excerpts flagged as problematic by her Speakers Bureau. And you might remember during the primaries, Bernie Sanders kept pressuring Hillary to release the transcripts. But WikiLeaks wonderfully has done for us what the Hillary campaign was unwilling to do. WikiLeaks' trove of hacked emails from Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's Gmail account includes an 80-page attachment seemingly from the Harry Walker agency that highlights hundreds of speech flags. Speech flags being things that the campaign saw in these speeches, or the Democratic National Committee of the DNC saw in these speeches that they were concerned about, that might come back to haunt her. The document sorts the speech excerpts by more than 50 categories, including China, Clinton Foundation, equal pay, government surveillance, Islam, personal wealth, and praising Wall Street. The Clinton campaign declined to comment about the authenticity of the document, which spokesman Glenn Kaplan said, quote, "By dribbling these out every day, WikiLeaks is proving they are nothing but a propaganda arm of the Kremlin with a political agenda doing Vladimir Putin's dirty work to help elect Donald Trump. The FBI is now investigating this crime. The unanswered questions are why Donald Trump strangely won't condemn it and whether any of his associates are involved," unquote. Well, Donald Trump did say, not during this last debate, but during the first one, it could have been Russian interests trying to elect him, or it could have been a 400-pound dude sitting on his bed. While Clinton warns against the excesses of Wall Street and openly talks about closing the carried interest loophole that benefits many bankers, her language in front of financial firms ranging from Goldman Sachs to Fidelity could prove problematic and includes flattering overtures about the contributions bankers have made to the social good. And keep in mind, when the speech happened, this was in the wake of the financial crash of 2008. Which I don't think anyone really went to jail for. No one was really held accountable. And it should come as no surprise that, that she's bought and paid for by these people, just like Obama was. A couple of weeks ago on this show, John Burt and I were talking with Bob Backus, and, Bob, of the Progress Report, and Bob made the point that, Obama... I would have challenged him on it, but he kind of said this at the end of the show. But Bob was talking about Obama not being owned by, by Wall Street, et cetera. And the truth is, he really was actually bought by them. If you go back and look at, they were already in Hillary's pocket, or Hillary was in their pocket, I should say, during the 2008 campaign cycle. But then when it became apparent that Obama was probably going to be the nominee, they swooped in and they bought him. You know, he was totally bought and paid for by Wall Street, and that's why a lot of those people ended up, you know, serving his administration in one capacity or another. And that's why nobody goes to jail, because it's one big club. In a speech before a Goldman Sachs symposium in October 2013, Clinton talks about the rampant blame that Wall Street faced after the crisis, saying, quote, and this is from one of the speeches, "And I think that there's a lot that could have been avoided in terms of both misunderstanding and really politicizing what happened with greater transparency, with greater openness on all sides. You know what happened, how did it happen, how do we prevent it from happening," unquote. In other words, she's speaking to these people, and instead of saying, well, you screwed this up and you did this wrong, she's saying, hey guys, how can we all work together? In the same speech, she talked about the Dodd-Frank financial reforms bill as something that needed to pass for political reasons. She also talked about a San Diego securities law firm in September 2014 and talked about being a New York senator representing Wall Street who, quote, did all I could to make sure they continued to prosper, unquote. And she joked at a Goldman conference in June 2013 about the bankers being the smartest people. And then below there are some excerpts from these speeches, giving some specific examples. Let me, maybe we'll go through a few of these, but let me just stop here for a moment. So, you know, there are Republicans, of course, complaining, those that are still supporting Trump, and personally, you know, in the wake of his comments. And by the way, let me just say for the record, you know, when I saw the tape of Trump and heard his comments and what he calls locker room talk, I got to be honest with you. Even when I was, you know, just I don't know, a young, dumb 16-year-old kid who didn't know better, I don't think I ever spoke about women as disrespectfully as Donald Trump has. And yet he's the nominee of the Party of Family Values, which is interesting. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but here's the thing. So some Republicans who are Trump supporters are complaining that the media has been so hyper-focused on Trump's comments, but they're not talking about these email dumps and these email dumps that they feel are very incriminating of Hillary Clinton. And of course, that is an example of liberal media bias. And I understand why some Republicans feel that way, because you know, this is getting some media attention. It was one of the first stories when I open up Politico. There it is, a story about Hillary Clinton's emails, and of course next to it is about how Trump's campaign is in a death spiral and whatnot. But here's what I just want to say about that. I think there is some bias in some quadrants of media. I think there's liberal media. I also think there's conservative media. And really it's all the mainstream media is just part of what I call corporate media. I don't think that the reason that the Hillary stuff is kind of getting buried by the Trump stuff, I don't think it's a matter of liberal media bias. I think it's a matter of maybe some mainstream media laziness, because the Hillary stuff, and there's been a history of things that surround Hillary Clinton in terms of scandal just naturally tend to be complicated. Her relationship with Wall Street is complicated. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me here. I'm not defending Hillary Clinton. You know, I think she's a bought and paid for corporatist, just like the rest of them. Okay, but her scandals tend to be a little more complicated. This kind of stuff is a little more complicated, and the context in which these things happen and whatnot. I mean, not just the speeches, but some of the other communications and whatnot. They're complicated stories. If you go all the way back to the Clinton administration, there were, you know, Bill Clinton, there were complicated stories, scandals. There were scandals like Travelgate, Whitewater. These were kind of complex scandals that I think a lot of people had a hard time kind of wrapping their minds around. And the mainstream media isn't going to spend too much time digging into those things, not because Bill Clinton, because those are things that happened during his presidency, not because he was a Democrat, and it's a matter of liberal bias, but because the media isn't going to dig into these things that are complicated when they could be spending their time on things that are easy and salacious. And right now is a perfect example of that. The Hillary stuff is a little complicated. If you want to know, for example, why the things contained in these transcripts from these speeches, why they are problematic, you got to actually read them, and you got to actually think about them, and what does this mean, and what can we infer from this. The Trump stuff is easy. You know, yeah, he's a pig in terms of how he discusses women. By the way, again, he's the nominee of the Party of Family Values. You guys knew what you were getting, right? But okay. You know, but that stuff is easy. And that's why the media would rather focus on Trump, because it's the easiest thing in the world on 24-hour cable news and whatnot and all these shows to play the tape over and over again of Trump being a pig, and he should be ashamed and embarrassed. But it's so much easier to focus on that than on anything complicated. It's not about liberal bias, and I can prove it to you. Because if this stuff were about liberal bias, then why is it then, again, let's go back to the Clinton administration. So the media didn't have a lot of patience with Whitewater or Travelgate or stuff like that. Complicated stuff, right? But they had no problem focusing on Bill Clinton's extramarital affairs when those scandals popped up, particularly during the primary. And then, of course, the granddaddy of them all, Monica Lewinsky, toward the end of Clinton's, well, kind of toward the end of Clinton's second term, the media could not get enough. I remember this vividly. They could not get enough of Bill Clinton's Monica Lewinsky scandal. So if it were a matter of liberal bias, then why was the media, and again, they were consumed with the Monica Lewinsky scandal. I remember they actually showed on live television his giving a statement to the federal prosecutors. I mean, that was carried on television at the time. And we've seen other sex scandals involving Democrats that the media, I mean, you know, Anthony Weiner, just another random example. One of many, many examples, you know, that initial, I mean, Weiner, he's had, you know, the big scandal and then another one that, you know, after a while, it's the law of diminishing returns. But that first one, when Weiner accidentally tweeted as Weiner, the media was all over that. But wait a minute, Anthony Weiner's a big liberal. I thought there was liberal bias. No. Here's where the bias is. If it's a story involving sex, if it's salacious, people are going to pay attention, and the media, this sort of fast food media that we have, is going to give you what you want. That's where the bias is. It's not about ideology. It's about, if it's about sex, let's run with it. Oh, and this other stuff that's a little more complicated, maybe if we had time. But we don't have time, because we have something about sex. We have this really salacious story to talk about. So that's what's really going on there. And again, there's countless other examples of this. But so I just kind of wanted to get that out, because I do understand. I do understand why Republicans are frustrated, because they feel all this Hillary stuff, she's getting kind of a pass. I get it. There is a bias there. I just disagree about what the bias is. And by the way, I've been hearing since I was a kid about the so-called liberal media and liberal media bias. And the thing is, Republicans use that so often that it's like the little boy that cried wolf, because there are examples of bias. Here's an example of bias. I agree with you. There's bias here in how the media is treating Trump versus Hillary, and why this stuff is, you know, it pops up on a website like Politico, but then it slides under the radar because, oh, let's hear the Trump audio of him talking about grabbing a woman. You know, let's hear that for the millionth time, because that's much more interesting. Because look, in the country of Jerry Springer, in the country of the Kardashians, yeah, to a lot of people that is more interesting. That's just the reality of it. We'll go through a few of these quickly. I don't want to, there's a whole list of them here, but just kind of give you an idea. When a questioner at Goldman Sachs said she raised money for Hillary Clinton in 2008, Hillary Clinton joked, "You are the smartest people." That one's not a big deal. That's just her being smarmy. Let's see. At a Goldman summit, Hillary Clinton said, quote, "Many of you in this room are masters of the trend lines. You see over the horizon. You think about products that nobody has invented, and you go about the business of trying to do that. And, you know, let me just briefly say that one of the ways I look at domestic as well as international issues is by trying to focus not just on the headlines, although those are insistent and demand your attention, but to keep an eye on the trend lines. And many of you in this room are masters of the trend lines." Oh, God. I just threw up in my mouth from reading that. I swallowed it back down because I'm a professional. I don't enjoy the burning sensation in my throat, but that is just awful. That's just the level of can I say ass kissing? I think I can get away with that. But that is Paulie C says yes. So that is just come to think of it, I've heard the Moose say worse on the morning show,
Yes.
but not during Yom Kippur. Oh, that is brutal. Obviously, but we all know the game, right? She wants their money. Give me your money for the campaign, for the Clinton Foundation, whatever. So she goes there and says whatever they want to hear, and there's no... there's no moment, I'm sure, when at some point in that room she looks at these people and say, by the way, okay, so I know I've said all these glowing things about you, and my nose is very brown because I want you to line my pockets with green, but just a little bit of constructive criticism. Maybe you shouldn't have wrecked the economy like you did. No, I'm sure that never even came up. Not even a gentle suggestion. Maybe in the future you could, not wreck the economy. Because that's who she's talking to. She's talking to people who participated in wrecking the economy in 2008. Let's see. Clinton joked it's risky for her to speak to a group committed to future markets given her past Whitewater scandal. Oh, this is interesting. She actually joked about Whitewater. That's not arrogant to joke about a scandal, is it? Let's see. Here's what she said, quote, "Now, it's always a little bit risky for me to come speak to a group that is committed to the futures markets because there's a few knowing laughs. Many years ago, I actually traded in the futures markets. I mean, this was so long ago. It was before computers were invented, I think." What? Is that supposed to be funny? Is she making a joke there? I can't even tell. "And I worked with a group of like-minded friends and associates who traded in pork bellies and cotton and other such things, and I did pretty well. I invested about $1,000 and traded up to about $100,000, and then my daughter was born, and I just didn't think I had enough time or mental space to figure out anything having to do with trading other than trading time with my daughter for time with the rest of my life. So I got out, and I thought that would be the end of it," unquote. Okay. She's trying to show what a, human she is by, she wanted to spend time with her daughter. Boy, she sure did well, though, huh, with her trading. Let's see. Clinton said that, interesting. Clinton said that the blame placed on the United States banking system for the crisis, quote, "could have been avoided in terms of both misunderstanding and really politicizing what happened," unquote. See, guys, it's not your fault. All the plebeians out there, they blame you because they don't understand. I understand, but they don't. The common folk, they just don't get you and what you were really doing or trying to do. Let's see. Quote, "That was one of the reasons that I started traveling in February of 2009, so people could, literally yell at me for the United States and our banking system causing this everywhere. See, I martyred myself for you. You have to give me money. I martyred myself. I went out there and people yelled at me because of what you guys, well, not what you did, because it wasn't your fault or anything, but, people yelled at me anyway. It's nice of her. Now, that's an oversimplification, we know, but it was the conventional wisdom. And I think that there's a lot that could have been avoided in terms of both misunderstanding and really politicizing what happened with greater transparency, with greater openness on all sides. you know, what happened? How did it happen? How do we prevent it from happening? You guys help us figure it out, and let's make sure that we do it right this time. And I think that everybody was desperately trying to fend off the worst effects institutionally, governmentally, and there just wasn't that opportunity to try to sort this out, and that came later, unquote. Oh my God. I can't read any more of these. They're making me nauseous. But, I mean, I don't know why. I mean, really, it's not like it's a big surprise. I mean, you know, we know this is what goes on. We know this is how the game is played. But, oh, it's just nauseating, isn't it? So there you go. That's the next president of the United States, because I do believe she will win. I absolutely believe she will win. And I've said from the beginning, I don't believe she'll win because, you know, she'll have beaten Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump will have beaten himself. The debate the other night was, like I said, it was quite quite compelling television. And that I'm going to give equal time to ridiculing Trump in a moment. Now that we're at about the halfway point, but and of course, half of Gary's audience will be turning off the program now. But that's fine. But so I thought. Trump, this is an observation that I haven't heard anyone else make, but I thought it was interesting how in the beginning, Trump, for the first, I would say, 10 minutes or so, he seemed really kind of almost unwell. Like he looked exhausted. He looked absolutely exhausted, and he sounded it. And he was just kind of the way he was speaking, he was just kind of rambling. His eyes were half closed, although they kind of look like that a lot anyway. And he was doing that sniffing thing again. You know that sniffing thing that he denies that he ever does? I don't know what the big deal is. I mean, he probably has seasonal allergies or something. Oh, Bob Backus. Yes, Paulie. See, I would love Bob to come in.
Okay, he'll be right in.
Great. Bob would probably like to join me for the Trump stuff, but but I just I thought for the first 10 minutes or so he seemed kind of out of it, but then about 10 minutes in he kind of perked up once the insults started flying, and he really started you know, just saying these very insulting, aggressive things to Hillary. He really kind of, that seemed to energize him. I think he just enjoys insulting people and saying he's going to, you know, appoint a special prosecutor and whatnot, and put Hillary in jail. He seemed to really kind of wake up. But, you know, he's at a point where, I mean, we've never seen anything like this. You know, people have been talking about civil war within the Republican Party for a long time. But for a long time, it was in terms of, you know, the Tea Partiers versus the establishment. And then that all kind of blew over. And then it turned into, now it's Trump versus some of the establishment, because they're, you know, Paul Ryan said that he can't support what Trump said, so now Trump fires back at him and whatnot. And it's very, very entertaining. It's one of the reasons why I don't want this election to end. I'm just enjoying it so much. Bob Backus is here. Bob Backus of the Progress Report. How are you, sir?
I'm here to make sure you don't have an entire hour-long monologue.
Yes.
You have to leave that stuff to Shakespeare.
Well, you know what's wonderful, too, is I can take a sip of my drink now that you're here. I would love to hear your thoughts on the debate the other night.
Oh, it was a catastrophe. I mean, it's demeaning to our democracy. When I think about the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and I don't know, some time ago, PBS did a reenactment of the Lincoln-Douglas debates. I don't know if you happened to see it, but the level of discourse between Stephen A. Douglas, the little giant, and Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, this was just before the Civil War, and the big issue was slavery. And they did, I think, a series of at least 6 debates. Each debate would be 40, 50, 60 minutes or more.
Yeah, yeah.
And the level of discourse was extremely high, and people came from all over, and they would listen to these two men debate the great issue of the day. Lincoln was an opponent of slavery. Stephen Douglas tried to present the position it should be a states issue, determined state by state. But the level of discourse between those two men, the little giant and Honest Abe, I mean, and then you look at what happened with this last debate, and how low have we fallen? I mean, did we have citizens that were so much better? Do we have better educated citizens those days? People came from all over. And they didn't, there were no commercial breaks, thank God. And to listen to the level of those debates, which is just so impressive when you see the reenactment or you read the transcripts. And then you think about Donald Trump going around, you're the devil. I'm going to throw you in jail if I win this election. It's demeaning. It's a disgrace to our democracy that we've fallen this low. I'm not sure we're going to keep this democracy forever. I often think that our history is paralleling the Romans. I'm a big Roman history buff, maybe you know. And, they came to a point where they could no longer sustain their republic. Neither the Romans nor us are really a democracy. We're a republic. We're representative, not direct election. And when I look at Trump in his behavior in that debate, he infringed on her space. He went around and tried to intimidate her.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy. It was like he was stalking her.
It was like he was stalking her. And that stunt of having those four women, be part of his team, his debate. He announced to the press he was going to have debate prep, and he brings in these four women. And has them sit there. I mean, it was pathetic. It was demeaning. But he doesn't understand. It was demeaning to him that he would stoop to this. I've never seen, I'm a lot older than you, man. I'm in the part of the silver tsunami. I got the hair to prove it. I cannot believe that we have sunk this low. I mean, the Kennedy, never mind going back to Lincoln Douglas in 1858 or whatever it was, 1856 or 58, I can't remember. By the way, Douglas won the election after those debates, but Lincoln, won the prize in 1860. When he became the Republican nominee, one of our, most people consider him either our first or second greatest president. And those debates were critical to that. And when you compare that, or even Nixon and Kennedy, which was the next great presidential debate, and after that debate in 1960, we didn't have another one until 1976. These things did not continue.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was only until 1976 when it was Jimmy Carter versus Ronald Reagan.
Okay, and they only debated once, right?
And they only debated once. I believe you're right about that. And, people say that debate cost Carter the election. I don't believe it. I think it was the Iranian fiasco and his failed rescue attempt. The fact the Iranians still had our diplomats in captivity until after the inauguration started. And they left Iranian airspace at the precise hour that Reagan took off, as they wanted to humiliate Carter in every way possible.
Oh, absolutely,
and it was only after that the presidential debates became institutionalized. I'm glad we've got them. I mean, aren't you? I mean, I think we need this. And I think the Presidential Debate Commitment does a good job. But this was a disgrace. This was an absolute disgrace. And I don't know, people talked about Trump sniffling a lot in the first debate. I was much more aware in the second debate.
Right, he was doing it. I don't know if you heard me when I was talking about that, but I thought the first 10 minutes or so of this last debate, he seemed kind of out of it, and he was doing the sniffing, and he just looked exhausted. It wasn't until he really got into hurling the insults that he seemed to wake up, like he's energized by that, by being negative.
I can't believe we are faced with a Republican nominee so unqualified, so unfit. Another thing about Trump, and I'm interested to hear what you're planning to do for your vote this year, because you've been talking about that some. But
yes,
everything about Trump is about It's about, and it's his entire career. There's nothing he doesn't. I sometimes think he wants to build this wall. Not much mention of that anymore, by the way.
That's true. You're right.
But I think he wanted to build this wall because he could have a 1,500 to 2,000 mile thing that could go Trump, 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 all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean at San Diego.
No doubt.
I think that's why he wants that wall. Trump, 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 Trump,
right.
Trump, Trump. For Trump, it's all about him. It's all about him and protecting his brand. There are some people, I don't know as I'd go this far, Some people think that this whole campaign is an effort to promote his brand. I don't know.
I think so. I think that. I don't believe he wants to win. I don't believe he wants to be president.
Well, have you talked about this, Matt? For him, he's the Republican nominee for president.
The party of family values.
Well, so they say. I don't agree with some of their family values.
Well, I don't either, but isn't that remarkable?
It is remarkable. But here he is, and he's attacking the leaders of the Republican Party. Most people think if there is a leader of the Republican Party, it's Paul Ryan,
right?
Who's not only the Speaker of the House, he was the vice presidential candidate with Mitt Romney 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And got pretty good notices for his role in that. He's attacked him. He's attacked Mitch McConnell.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The leader of the majority party in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah.
And, of course, we all know he's attacked John McCain. I mean, wow, what's he doing? It's like, I don't know. I heard somebody, maybe it was Chris Matthews, somebody say, reminds me of the story of Samson and Delilah.
Yeah.
We have wonderful stories in the Bible, don't we?
Yes, we do, yes.
And the story of Samson, who was a giant, strong man, a hero of the Israelites, and they figured out that the key to his strength was his hair. It's in the Bible, so
it must be.
You must be legit. Strong. You got more hair than I do. But anyhow, it was the strength of his hair, and Delilah betrayed him and had his hair cut, and then he was brought low. But before he went down, he took down the temple with him. He destroyed the sacred temple.
Yes.
And somebody said, I thought it was a pretty good analogy. This may be what Trump is doing. He's going to go down, but he's going to take the Republican Party with him.
Yeah,
and by God, he just may do it.
We have a call. Norm is on the line.
Okay.
Norm, welcome to the show. Norm, are you still there?
Yeah.
Hey, Norm.
Hi, Norm.
Hey, my comment is to both Bob and Matt. Do you think Hillary Clinton was that perfect on the debate?
I don't think she was perfect.
Well, I don't think she had quite the super win she did in debate 1.
Yeah.
But her task was really tough.
Yeah.
She was trying to do what Michelle Obama, who's going to be here tomorrow at SNU, advised.
My other question is, I don't think either one of them should be qualified to be president. I think, Bob, honestly, you would make a better president than they do.
There you go. You've got Norm's vote, Bob.
All right. I'm a little old, but
Norm,
maybe next time I'll try it, Norm. Thanks for the compliment.
Norm can write you in.
Thank you.
All right.
You've got to change this country to a better focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Norm.
Nobody's talking about the education or the health care or the Social Security. They're all slamming each other.
Well, in all honesty,
thank you, Norm.
I think Hillary is trying to talk about that. But what can she do when she's in a debate with a guy who's stalking her, telling her she's going to be put in jail if he wins, calling her the devil, saying she has hatred in her heart? It's not easy to stay above that level when you're confronted with that stuff. I mean, you want to respond. I mean, you really do.
I do think she's been effective, though, at not letting him rattle her.
I think she was.
Yeah.
And he tried the ultimate provocation by having these women sit in the front row of the audience at that debate at George Washington University out in St. Louis. And, I think she, by and large, succeeded in staying above this level of gutter discourse.
We have another call.
Oh, good.
Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
Hi. I won't be too long. I just want to make a couple of comments.
Sure.
Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Hi. Nice to hear from you.
Is this Pat?
Yeah.
Hi, Pat. Nice to hear you again.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Well, I do watch you, but nice to see you on the show. I'm going to make it quick because I'm getting the reputation of being a blabbermouth, but...
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, I deny it.
I thought in the beginning, when you were talking, you two were talking about the beginning of the debate, he looked like a caged tiger. He was walking back and forth, and I'm saying to myself, what is wrong with him?
Yeah.
Is he on something? And you know what I think? He really hit bottom. I mean, all this other stuff, he was talking about other people. But did you hear what he said about his daughter on Howard Stern?
Oh, yeah. I almost, though, the Howard Stern stuff, I almost don't even want to hold that against him because that's...
Why not?
No, but he was...
Why not?
Because it's the context of it.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't do that on Howard Stern, and I wouldn't do that on
What?
Howard
I
Stern.
don't
But then
know.
we wouldn't get invited to Howard Stern either.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I don't hold up Howard
but
Stern.
to say that about his own daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to know this guy has no principles. I mean, that was, I was cringing when I was listening to that.
I can understand.
It's no wonder Ivanka divorced him, because he's scary. Okay, that's it. He is scary.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you talk.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you for the call,
Thanks
Pat.
for calling, Pat. Another thing I'd like to say about Trump, and maybe you've made this point, Matt. I don't know what happened before I got here. Everything about Trump is about I.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't understand, and Hillary Clinton does understand, that he doesn't run this government all by himself.
Right.
There is a Congress out there, also a Supreme Court, the third branch of government. But principally, there is a Congress. Now, he can't do any of these things he's talking about without having the assistance of Congress. He can't change the tax law the way he wants to, which apparently mostly benefits people like him, as I understand it. But he doesn't understand that I can't do this. And when he was attacking Hillary, you've been in the Senate, you've been in the Congress, and you haven't got this and that done. Well, I can't remember just exactly what he was talking about. I guess it was maybe taxes or something. But she was one of 100 U.S. senators.
Right.
And you only get things done by working collaboratively with people, and even with people on the other party.
Right.
That's the only way you get things done. It can't happen any other way, particularly when, as we have a divided system with one party in control of Congress, another party in control of the White House. That's the only way you can get things done. I don't think Trump has any idea that that's the case. He thinks he can just declare, I'm going to build a wall in Mexico and make the Mexicans pay for it. Well, how are you going to do that without having Congress behind you? And that wouldn't even do it, because you got to have the Mexican people be willing to pay the bill.
Right.
And when somebody said, well, they refused to pay it, he said, well, I'm going to make it 10 feet higher, as if that's a rational response.
Build it to the moon. Well, here's the thing, though. See, because I look at it from the standpoint of, I don't believe he wants to govern. I don't believe he wants to win. I think this whole thing is a giant publicity stunt that got away from him. So I think he probably does realize everything that you were talking about. But if you know you're probably going to lose, I mean, look, when a politician knows they're going to lose, they can say whatever they want to. They're not going to be held accountable.
See, I think he's so in his own reality show.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you. I think he thinks he's going to win.
Really?
I don't think he believes the polls. Mitt Romney in 2000, in the last election cycle, 2012, he didn't believe the polls.
Yeah.
He thought he was going to win.
Yeah.
There were a few outliers.
Well, he had a shot.
Well, he had a shot, and he certainly had better poll numbers with, women and minorities than Trump ever will.
Yeah, of course.
But he really thought he was going to win. My understanding is that the election night they ran out of parking for private jets at Boston Logan Airport, because everybody was flying in their private jet to celebrate his victory.
Yeah.
And it never happened.
Yeah.
But I think he thought he'd win. I think Trump thinks he's going to win.
Really?
And I don't know how he's going to handle it when he loses. I don't know how he's going to handle it. Will he be gracious? He hasn't been very gracious.
No, he won't.
I can't imagine.
Well, my theory is when he loses, he'll use that as a jumping off point for whatever his next venture is, which I think will be Trump TV or something like that. I think that's why he brought in somebody like Steve Bannon, who's a media guy, Steve Bannon from Breitbart. I think that is the next, because months ago he started already making excuses for losing, talking about, it's going to be a rigged election.
It's going to be rigged. They're going to steal the election in Philadelphia and all that stuff.
So I think he's shoring up his base for his Trump TV or whatever it is, some sort of Trump media thing.
But this is dangerous. This is very dangerous. The most recent contested election, probably the most contested election we ever had, was when Al Gore ran for president against George W. Bush. And it went down to a few hundred votes in Florida, and the recount was stopped by a 5-4 vote in the U.S. Supreme Court, all on party lines there, too.
Oh, absolutely.
And Al Gore said, I don't agree with the result of the Supreme Court decision, but I accept it.
Yep.
He said, I accept it.
Yep.
I can't see Trump doing that.
Right.
I think he will denounce the thing as rigged and a fraudulent outcome.
Yeah.
And he will have, a few million people, maybe several million people, that'll cheer him on. So this is a real scary scenario.
Right.
Because the one thing our country has to have is acceptance in the result of the democratic process.
Right.
And this is the biggest test of that ever.
Yeah, I agree
So
with you on that.
it's really, really alarming. And
Yeah.
I'm very, very concerned about what we're going to see on November 9th.
Yeah.
Although Trump apparently thinks the election is November 28th. He said that the other day, but it is in fact November 8th.
So you're concerned about what will happen after the election, but I assume the election itself you're not concerned, right? I mean, I would think that, I mean, I certainly think that it's going to be Hillary, but I've thought that all along.
It's going to be Hillary,
Yeah.
and I only wish that her negatives weren't so high. And I know she's got some responsibility for those high negatives. She does have a tendency to be a little secretive about things that I don't think she should be secretive about. But she's also been the victim of 30 years of relentless attacks by the other side. I mean, you know, from everything from the suicide of Vince Foster, which they tried to paint as a murder in which she was complicit, to Whitewater, which is a real estate deal in which they lost money. Nothing came of this. Travelgate was nothing but the cumulative effect of charge after charge after charge. And the most recent example is Benghazi. That's been investigated and investigated and investigated, including by the Republican-controlled Congress,
Right.
the Trey Gowdy Committee.
Yeah.
And they had her on the stand for 11 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, when all was done, they could not find anything culpable in the way she handled this. But that doesn't stop them. And even today,
No, it's partisan
Trump
politics. Yeah.
and others who of that mind are still raising the issue of Benghazi. And, you know, tragic things like that happen, and it's not necessarily someone's fault just because they're high profile and running for president of the United States. She is one of the best prepared, most qualified candidates we've ever had to run for president.
Oh, she is qualified, absolutely. I mean,
Qualified,
can't-
and I'll tell you something else. Nobody will outwork her in anything she does. She works relentlessly, whether she's being a first lady and working on children's issues and trying the first effort to get health care for more Americans, whether she's a U.S. senator and trying to help out upstate New York with its economic problems and get, you know, good response for the first responders to 9/11, because she was a senator at that time, whether she's campaigning. When she came here to New Hampshire to campaign, I know it didn't work out very well for her in New Hampshire.
Right.
But the first several months of her campaign, she was not doing big events. She was not going around like Trump does, you know, inciting people to be, you know, be raucous at rallies. She was listening to the people in New Hampshire. And out of that came some great policy ideas to deal with, number one, the opioid epidemic. This is where she really learned how severe that was, because she was willing to listen. And number two, she learned about the problem we have in an aging population with the care crisis and the burden that imposes on, you know, family members, her parents, and others in their family that, you know, need care.
Right.
And we don't have a system to. She got that, and she had developed very good policy responses to that. Nobody will outwork her as president of the United States.
Well, even Trump said, you know, at the end, which I thought was his best moment, when they had to kind of compliment each other
Yep.
at the end of the debate. And Trump said, and I think he was being sincere. He said, you know, she's a hard worker and she doesn't give up. She's a fighter and she doesn't give up. And I think that's a very good trait.
Which, of course, is the way he thinks about himself too.
True.
So she says a characteristic of me, therefore I like that characteristic.
That's a good point. You know, it's funny you were talking about how with Trump everything is I. As you were mentioning that, I thought back to when he unveiled Mike Pence as his running mate.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched that announcement, but if you watch it, it's interesting because he does his normal bloviating, and it seems like he almost forgets that he's there to introduce Pence.
Right.
And then when he does get to the part where he talks about Pence, his tone changes, and he actually seems kind of bored. When he's talking about someone other than himself, he seems kind of bored,
Yep.
like he's just going through the motions of it. And
Of course, he didn't really want Pence. Apparently, that's what most of the pundits are reporting. He wanted Christie,
yeah,
and Christie was a little toxic because of Bridgegate, and
Yeah.
in his approval rating in his own state is now down to 26%.
wow, I didn't know it was that.
I don't know
low.
how you get that low, but
Yeah.
the bond rating in New Jersey's gone down, down, down. The state is in a financial wreck. His opposition to improving the access to New York with a third tunnel, you know, all these things, and then Bridgegate above all. But he wanted Christie. And, you know, he finally let people talk him into to suggesting Pence. So he did it, but he wasn't very enthusiastic about it. And you notice in the debate, he threw Pence under the bus.
He did. That was strange.
That was strange.
I've
I can't
never
remember
seen that.
anybody do that.
Yeah.
Oh, my vice president. I haven't talked to him, but I don't agree with him on Syria policy.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing.
That was
amazing.
very odd. I mean, the only thing I can think even close to that I've ever seen was Reagan. When Reagan picked Bush, Bush had previously been pro-choice and was now trying to look at least pro-life.
Yeah.
And somebody asked Reagan about it, and Reagan said, well, if two people agree on everything, that means, one of them isn't thinking. But so Reagan handled it well. And there's nothing wrong, I don't think, with running mates disagreeing on something. But that was a very odd moment during the debate. The way Trump handled that was strange.
I haven't talked to him, and I disagree with him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very, very dismissive.
There you go.
But what I often wonder, too, what must it be like to be Mike Pence? Can you imagine I'm sure he has more than one every day, more than one kind of just face in the hands moment of like, oh, yeah. I mean, a guy like Mike Pence with a running mate who's talking about grabbing a woman's genitals and this and that. How does Mike Pence even mentally process the fact that he now has to deal with this and find some way to either defend it or, to his credit, at least he acknowledged that Trump's comments offended him.
Well, he did one day, and then he walked it back the next day because he thought Trump has sufficiently apologized, and he's a big man.
Right.
But, Pence has got a real problem because he's told people he considers himself first a Christian, second a conservative, and I guess third a Republican. I don't know about two or three, but that's what he said, first a Christian. Well, how does a Christian deal with this? Well, he says forgiveness,
Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to be contrite and confess your sins before you get forgiveness as a Christian, I think. And Trump hasn't done that.
You don't think Trump is sincere about being sorry that he got caught?
Not at all. Oh, I think he's sorry about getting caught.
That's what I meant,
Yeah, he's sorry about getting caught. He's not sorry about his locker room banter. That's just guys talk.
Yeah, I was saying earlier in the show, I mean, even when I was a teenager, I never talked about women the way Donald Trump talks about women.
Never.
I
would never. I don't care what's in a locker room.
Yeah.
I don't care what locker. I've been in a few locker rooms in my life. We all have as guys. We all had some sports experience. I never heard anything like that.
Yeah.
I've heard some crude comments, about this woman has this endowments and that sort of thing. But to say I have assaulted women and I can get away with it, which is what he admitted to. He admitted to sexual assault. So it was not just words. It was his declaration that he committed a felony crime. And was not ashamed of it.
I don't agree with you there. I think that I don't think it was an admission of that. I think he was joking, but I don't think it's a very good joke. I don't think he was literally.
I'll tell you, the jokes people tell reveal a lot about them.
Well, that's true. That's true.
I mean, some people delight in telling jokes that have a racist tinge or a misogynist tinge. I think that says a lot about them.
Yeah, I think it can. I wouldn't go so far as to call it an admission, but I do think it's disgusting. And the thing is, some people will say, well, that's just words, and he was kidding and whatnot. But it's also, if you look at it in the broader context, it's on top of everything else that he has said about women over the years.
Well, it'd be just words if he said this is something I've thought about, but he said it's something I've done.
Right. Yeah. When you're a star, you can get away with whatever. So, we're almost out of time, but so do you have any predictions in terms of what happens to the Republican Party after this election? Do you think they're crippled for a long time? Do you think it's a grand reset for them? Okay, they've learned their lesson and no more reality TV stars?
Yes, I do. And believe me, I want to see a Republican Party that's a responsible opposition party. Mm-hmm. I don't want the Democrats to control everything. I don't think that would be good for us.
Yeah.
I think we need to have a responsible opposition party. And we used to have one in the days when we had, people like Dwight Eisenhower and, there's been others. We've had many distinguished Republicans in New Hampshire, Walter Peterson, Perkins Bass, many others. I think we need that. Mm-hmm. And I agree. And my understanding is that if Hillary wins this election, which I think is almost inevitable, this will be the first time when one Democratic administration, or there'll be 3 consecutive Democratic administrations without a death intervening. The last time that happened was Pierce Buchanan.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great example of either one of them. But that's the last time we had 3 consecutive Democratic administrations without a death intervening, which was the case with Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah.
And after this, I think the Republicans are going to have to do more than just have a commission and say, well, maybe we should have a little more outreach to Hispanics.
Yes.
I mean, they're going to have to do more than that. They're going to have
Yeah.
to really recalculate. Are they going to continue to be the party of total opposition as they've been on the Affordable Health Care Plan, Obamacare?
Yeah.
They've never done anything except try to repeal it. They've never said they have ideas to offer to fix it.
Right.
And I mean, and this is a plan that came out of their own think tanks and was first launched by Governor Romney in Massachusetts.
That's right, Romney.
It's a Romney Republican idea, this whole Obamacare.
Yeah.
And yet they just vote to repeal and repeal and repeal and never come up with a suggestion to fix it.
We're out of time, but of course, progress reports on next for people watching live. What do you have coming up, Bob?
We have Arnie Arneson.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent.
She's even more outspoken than I am.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
And feisty, too, and we always like to have her. So
Absolutely. With
that's
the attitude with our
been a pleasure to join you, man. I'm glad I was able to do that.
Yeah, Bob, thank you so much. And I think Gary will be back next week, assuming he makes it back safely, which we hope he does. Last I knew he was in New York, so he's almost back here. So I'm sure we'll see him then. So tune in then. Bob, thanks again. And we'll talk at you all a little bit later. Good night.
Okay.